World War I, also known as the First World War, the Great War, the Seminole Catastrophe, and initially in North America as the European War, was a global war originating in Europe that lasted from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918. Contemporaneously described as the war to end all wars, it led to the mobilization of more than 70 million military personnel, including 60 million Europeans, making it one of the largest wars in history. It is also one of the deadliest conflicts in history, with an estimated 9 million combatants and 7 million civilian deaths as a direct result of the war, while resulting genocides and the resulting 1918 influenza pandemic caused another 50 to 100 million deaths worldwide. On June 28, 1914, the Austro-Hungarian heir Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo, leading to the July crisis. In response, on 23 July Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia. Serbia's reply failed to satisfy the Austrians, and the two moved to a war footing. A network of interlocking alliances enlarged the crisis from a bilateral issue in the Balkans to one involving most of Europe. By July 1914, the great powers of Europe were divided into two coalitions, the Triple Entente, consisting of France, Russia, and Britain, and the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. The Triple Alliance was only defensive in nature, allowing Italy to stay out of the war until April 1915, when it joined the Allied powers after its relations with Austria-Hungary deteriorated. Russia felt it necessary to back Serbia and, after Austria-Hungary shelled the Serbian capital of Belgrade on the 28th of July, approved partial mobilization. Full Russian mobilization was announced on the evening of 30th of July. On the 31st, Austria-Hungary and Germany did the same, while Germany demanded Russia demobilize within 12 hours. When Russia failed to comply, Germany declared war on Russia on 1st of August in support of Austria-Hungary, with Austria-Hungary following suit on 6th of August. France ordered full mobilization in support of Russia on 2nd of August. German strategy for a war on two fronts against France and Russia was to rapidly concentrate the bulk of its army in the west to defeat France within 6 weeks, then shift forces to the east before Russia could fully mobilize. This was later known as the Schlieffen Plan. On 2nd of August, Germany demanded free passage through Belgium, an essential element in achieving a quick victory over France. When this was refused, German forces invaded Belgium on 3rd of August and declared war on France the same day. The Belgian government invoked the 1839 Treaty of London, and in compliance with its obligations under this, Britain declared war on Germany on 4th of August. On 12th of August, Britain and France also declared war on Austria-Hungary. On the 23rd of August, Japan sided with Britain, seizing German possessions in China and the Pacific. In November 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered the war on the side of the Central Powers, opening fronts in the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, and the Sinai Peninsula. The United States initially remained neutral, though even while neutral it became an important supplier of war materiel to the Allies. Eventually, after the sinking of American merchant ships by German submarines, the declaration by Germany that its navy would resume unrestricted attacks on neutral shipping, and the revelation that Germany was trying to incite Mexico to make war on the United States, the U.S. declared war on Germany on April 6, 1917. The war was fought in and drew upon each power's colonial empire as well, spreading the conflict to Africa and across the globe. The Entente and its allies would eventually become known as the Allied Powers, while the grouping of Austria-Hungary, Germany and their allies would become known as the Central Powers. The 1917 February Revolution in Russia replaced the Tsarist autocracy with the provisional government, but continuing discontent with the cost of the war led to the October Revolution, the creation of the Soviet Socialist Republic, and the signing of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk by the new government in March 1918, ending Russia's involvement in the war. On 30th of October, the Ottoman Empire capitulated, signing the Armistice of Mudros. On 4th of November, the Austro-Hungarian Empire agreed to the Armistice of Villa Giusti. With its allies defeated, revolution at home, and the military no longer willing to fight, Kaiser Wilhelm abdicated on 9th of November and Germany signed an armistice on November 11, 1918, effectively ending the war. World War I was a significant turning point in the political, cultural, economic, and social climate of the world. It is considered to mark the end of the Second Industrial Revolution and the Pax Britannica. The war and its immediate aftermath sparked numerous revolutions and uprisings. The Big Four, Britain, France, the United States, and Italy, imposed their terms on the defeated powers in a series of treaties agreed at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, the most well-known being the German Peace Treaty, the Treaty of Versailles. Ultimately, as a result of the war, the Austro-Hungarian, German, Ottoman, and Russian empires ceased to exist, with numerous new states created from their remains. However, despite the conclusive Allied victory, and the creation of the League of Nations during the peace conference, intended to prevent future wars, a Second World War would follow just over 20 years later. Names. The term World Wehr was first used in September 1914 by German biologist and philosopher Ernst Haeckel, who claimed that there is no doubt that the course and character of the feared European Wehr will become the First World War in the full sense of the word, citing a wire service report in the Indianapolis Star on September 20, 1914. Prior to World War II, the events of 1914 to 1918 were generally known as the Great War or simply the World War. In October 1914, the Canadian magazine Maclean's wrote, "Some wars name themselves. This is the Great War." Contemporary Europeans also referred to it as the War to End Wehr or the War to End All Wars due to their perception of its then unparalleled scale and devastation. After World War II began in 1939, the terms became more standard, with British Empire historians, including Canadians, favoring the First World Wehr and Americans World War I. Background. Political and military alliances. For much of the 19th century, the major European powers had tried to maintain a tenuous balance of power among themselves, resulting in a complex network of political and military alliances. The biggest challenges to this were Britain's withdrawal into so-called splendid isolation, the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the post-1848 rise of Prussia under Otto von Bismarck. Victory in the 1866 Austro-Prussian War established Prussian hegemony in Germany, while victory over France in the 1870–1871 Franco-Prussian War unified the German states into a German Reich under Prussian leadership. In 1873, to isolate France and avoid a war on two fronts, Bismarck negotiated the League of the Three Emperors German, Dreikaiserbund, between Austria-Hungary, Russia and Germany. Concerned by Russia's victory in the 1877–1878 Russo-Turkish War and their influence in the Balkans, the League was dissolved in 1878, with Germany and Austria-Hungary subsequently forming the 1879 Dual Alliance. This became the Triple Alliance when Italy joined in 1882. The practical details of these alliances were limited, since their primary purpose was to ensure cooperation between the three imperial powers and isolate France. Attempts by Britain in 1880 to resolve colonial tensions with Russia and diplomatic moves by France led to Bismarck reforming the League in 1881. When the League finally lapsed in 1887, it was replaced by the Reinsurance Treaty, a secret agreement between Germany and Russia to remain neutral if either were attacked by France or Austria-Hungary. In 1890, the new German Emperor, Kaiser Wilhelm II, forced Bismarck to retire and was persuaded not to renew the Reinsurance Treaty by the new Chancellor, Leo von Caprivi. This allowed France to counteract the Triple Alliance with the Franco-Russian Alliance of 1894 and the 1904 Entente Cordiale with Britain, while in 1907 Britain and Russia signed the Anglo-Russian Convention. The agreements did not constitute formal alliances, but by settling long-standing colonial disputes, they made British entry into any future conflict involving France or Russia a possibility. These interlocking bilateral agreements became known as the Triple Entente. Arms race. The creation of the German Reich following victory in the 1871 Franco-Prussian War led to a massive increase in Germany's economic and industrial strength. Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz and Wilhelm II, who became emperor in 1890, sought to use that to create a Kaiserliche Marine or Imperial German Navy to compete with Britain's Royal Navy for world naval supremacy. In doing so, they were influenced by U.S. naval strategist Alfred Mahan, who argued possession of a blue water navy was vital for global power projection. Tirpitz translated his books into German and Wilhelm made them required reading. However, it was also driven by Wilhelm's admiration of the Royal Navy and desire to outdo it. This resulted in the Anglo-German naval arms race, but the launch of HMS Dreadnought in 1906 gave the Royal Navy a technological advantage over its German rival, which they never lost. Ultimately, the race diverted huge resources to creating a German navy large enough to antagonize Britain, but not defeat it. In 1911, Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg acknowledged defeat, leading to the Rüstungswende or armaments turning point, when Germany switched expenditure from the navy to the army. This was driven by Russia's recovery from the 1905 revolution, specifically increased investment post-1908 in railways and infrastructure in its western border regions. Germany and Austria-Hungary relied on faster mobilization to compensate for fewer numbers, It was concern at the closing of this gap that led to the end of the naval race, rather than a reduction in tension elsewhere. When Germany expanded its standing army by 170,000 men in 1913, France extended compulsory military service from 2 to 3 years. Similar measures taken by the Balkan powers and Italy led to increased expenditure by the Ottomans and Austria-Hungary. Absolute figures are hard to calculate, due to differences in categorizing expenditure, while they often omit civilian infrastructure projects with a military use, such as railways. However, from 1908 to 1913, defense spending by the 6 major European powers increased by over 50% in real terms. Conflicts in the Balkans. In October 1908, Austria-Hungary precipitated the Bosnian crisis of 1908 to 1909 by officially annexing the former Ottoman territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which it had occupied since 1878. This angered the Kingdom of Serbia and its patron, the Pan-Slavic and Orthodox Russian Empire. Russian political maneuvering in the region destabilized peace accords that were already fracturing in the Balkans, which came to be known as the powder keg of Europe. In 1912 and 1913, the First Balkan War was fought between the Balkan League and the fracturing Ottoman Empire. The resulting Treaty of London further shrank the Ottoman Empire, creating an independent Albanian state while enlarging the territorial holdings of Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece. When Bulgaria attacked Serbia and Greece on June 16, 1913, it sparked the 33-day Second Balkan War, by the end of which it lost most of Macedonia to Serbia and Greece, and southern Dobruja to Romania, further destabilizing the region. The great powers were able to keep these Balkan conflicts contained, but the next one would spread throughout Europe and beyond. Prelude. Sarajevo assassination. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, visited the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo. A group of 6 assassins, Kajako Popovic, Gavrilo Princip, Muhammad Mehmed Basic, Nedeljko Kabranovic, Trifko Grabez, and Vaso Kuberlovic, from the Yugoslavist group Mlada Bosna, supplied with arms by the Serbian Black Hand, gathered on the street where the Archduke's motorcade was to pass, with the intention of assassinating him. The political objective of the assassination was to break off Austria-Hungary's South Slav provinces, which Austria-Hungary had annexed from the Ottoman Empire, so they could be combined into a Yugoslavia. Kabranovic threw a grenade at the car, but missed. Some nearby were injured by the blast, but Ferdinand's convoy carried on. The other assassins failed to act as the cars drove past them. About an hour later, when Ferdinand was returning from a visit at the Sarajevo hospital with those wounded in the assassination attempt, the convoy took a wrong turn into a street where, by coincidence, Princip stood. With a pistol, Princip shot and killed Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Although they were reportedly not personally close, the Emperor Franz Joseph was profoundly shocked and upset. The reaction among the people in Austria, however, was mild, almost indifferent. As historians Benek Zeman later wrote, the event almost failed to make any impression whatsoever. On Sunday and Monday, 28 and 29 of June, the crowds in Vienna listened to music and drank wine, as if nothing had happened. Nevertheless, the political effect of the murder of the heir to the throne was significant, and was described by historian Christopher Clark on the BBC Radio 4 series Month of Madness as a 9/11 effect, a terrorist event charged with historic meaning, transforming the political chemistry in Vienna. Expansion of violence in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The assassination excessively intensified the existing traditional religion-based ethnic hostilities in Bosnia. The Austro-Hungarian authorities encouraged the subsequent anti-Serb riots in Sarajevo, in which Bosnian Croats and Bosniaks killed 2 Bosnian Serbs and damaged numerous Serb-owned buildings. Violent actions against ethnic Serbs were also organized outside Sarajevo, in other cities in Austro-Hungarian-controlled Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia and Slovenia. Austro-Hungarian authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina imprisoned and extradited approximately 5,500 prominent Serbs, 700 to 2,200 of whom died in prison. A further 460 Serbs were sentenced to death. A predominantly Bosniak special militia known as the Schutzkorps was established and carried out the persecution of Serbs. July crisis. The assassination led to a month of diplomatic maneuvering between Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, France and Britain, called the July crisis. Austria-Hungary correctly believed that Serbian officials, especially the officers of the Black Hand, were involved in the plot to murder the Archduke, and wanted to finally end Serbian interference in Bosnia. On 23 July, Austria-Hungary delivered to Serbia the July Ultimatum, a series of 10 demands that were made intentionally unacceptable, in an effort to provoke a war with Serbia. Serbia decreed general mobilization on 25th of July. Serbia accepted all the terms of the ultimatum except for Article 6, which demanded that Austrian delegates be allowed in Serbia for the purpose of participation in the investigation into the assassination. Following this, Austria broke off diplomatic relations with Serbia and, the next day, ordered a partial mobilization. Finally, on July 28, 1914, a month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. On 25th of July, Russia, in support of Serbia, declared partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary. On 30th of July, Russia ordered general mobilization. German Chancellor Bateman Hollweg waited until the 31st for an appropriate response, when Germany declared Erklärung des Kriegszustands, or Statement on the War Status. Kaiser Wilhelm II asked his cousin, Tsar Nicholas II, to suspend the Russian general mobilization. When he refused, Germany issued an ultimatum demanding its mobilization be stopped, and a commitment not to support Serbia. Another was sent to France, asking her not to support Russia if it were to come to the defense of Serbia. On 1st of August, after the Russian response, Germany mobilized and declared war on Russia. This also led to the general mobilization in Austria-Hungary on 4th of August. The German government issued demands to France that it remain neutral as they had to decide which deployment plan to implement, it being extremely difficult to change the deployment whilst it was underway. The modified German Schlieffen Plan, Aufmarsch II West, would deploy 80% of the army in the west, while Aufmarsch I OSD and Aufmarsch II OSD would deploy 60% in the west and 40% in the east. The French did not respond, but sent a mixed message by ordering their troops to withdraw 10 kilometers, 6 miles, from the border to avoid any incidents, and at the same time ordered the mobilization of their reserves. Germany responded by mobilizing its own reserves and implementing Aufmarsch II West. On 1st of August, Wilhelm ordered General Helmut von Moltke the Younger to march the whole of the army to the east after being wrongly informed that the British would remain neutral if France was not attacked. Moltke told the Kaiser that attempting to redeploy 1 million men was unthinkable, and that making it possible for the French to attack the Germans in the rear would prove disastrous. Yet Wilhelm insisted that the German army should not march into Luxembourg until he received a telegram sent by his cousin George V, who made it clear that there had been a misunderstanding. Eventually the Kaiser told Moltke, "Now you can do what you want." On 2nd of August, Germany occupied Luxembourg, and on 3rd of August declared war on France. On the same day, they sent the Belgian government an ultimatum demanding unimpeded right-of-way through any part of Belgium, which was refused. Early on the morning of 4th of August, the Germans invaded. King Albert ordered his military to resist and called for assistance under the 1839 Treaty of London. Britain demanded Germany comply with the treaty and respect Belgian neutrality. It declared war on Germany at 1900 hours UTC on August 4, 1914, effective from 2300 hours, following an unsatisfactory reply. Progress of the war. Opening hostilities. Confusion among the Central Powers. The strategy of the Central Powers suffered from miscommunication. Germany had promised to support Austria-Hungary's invasion of Serbia, but interpretations of what this meant differed. Previously tested deployment plans had been replaced early in 1914, but those had never been tested in exercises. Austro-Hungarian leaders believed Germany would cover its northern flank against Russia. Germany, however, envisioned Austria-Hungary directing most of its troops against Russia, while Germany dealt with France. This confusion forced the Austro-Hungarian army to divide its forces between the Russian and Serbian fronts. Serbian campaign. Austria invaded and fought the Serbian army at the Battle of Sur and Battle of Kolubara beginning on 12th of August. Over the next 2 weeks, Austrian attacks were thrown back with heavy losses, which marked the first major Allied victories of the war and dashed Austro-Hungarian hopes of a swift victory. As a result, Austria had to keep sizable forces on the Serbian front, weakening its efforts against Russia. Serbia's defeat of the Austro-Hungarian invasion of 1914 has been called one of the major upset victories of the 20th century. The campaign saw the very first use of medical evacuation by the Serbian army in autumn of 1915 and anti-aircraft warfare in the spring of 1915 after an Austrian plane was shot down with ground-to-air fire. German offensive in Belgium and France. When the war began, the German order of battle placed 80% of the army in the west, with the remainder acting as a screening force in the east.